What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some details about the first DLC for Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, after it was just recently announced at the Warhammer Skulls event, which is a celebration of Warhammer video games, which saw the announcement of Mechanicus 2, a little bit of information about Space Marine 2, and a handful of other announcements. But obviously, this being a big CRPG channel, most of my focus was on Rogue Trader. And we've got some pretty exciting stuff to talk about, with the first DLC being announced for August 8th. Being titled, of course, Void Shadows. Void Shadows is going to dive into the mystery of our very own Void ship, introducing both a new romanceable companion and sees us fighting off a genestealer cult, but more on that stuff in just a little bit, because there's a couple other things I want to mention. Alongside the announcement for this update, they also announced that the game is officially verified on Steam Deck, which is true. Its Steam page is in fact reflecting that now, though I haven't had a chance to fully check out the changes they've made to accomplish that yet, but thought it was definitely worth mentioning. And as part of the Warhammer Skulls event, Rogue Trader and its DLC are actually all on a 30% discount right now, which means if you haven't picked the game up yet, you can get both the base game and a season pass on that 30% discount, which puts the base game at like $35 US and the season pass for both of the DLCs at about $20. That is to say, both of the two planned DLCs. But with that said, let's actually start diving into this DLC a little bit further. So right away, it was announced that this DLC is going to be adding roughly 15 hours of content directly to the main campaign, if you will. It will be integrated into the overall story, which was in very direct response via things like surveys, etc., to people's overall distaste for how DLC was done in Wrath of the Righteous, where it was a lot of separate little side stories that were disconnected from the main game. So kind of standalone DLCs you could play through, and they wanted to move away from that and integrate it directly into the campaign, which is what we're seeing here. But the DLC itself, of course, as I mentioned, revolves around our Void ship and specifically the farthest reaches of it. You see, Void ships are incredibly large. There are significant portions of it you simply might never see in your day-to-day because they are effectively like giant cities. So this DLC plans to talk about the sort of deepest reaches of it, which is especially interesting because our Void ship, if you've played the main game, is in fact somewhat special for reasons I won't go into here, but if you've played the game already, I think that is an intriguing premise simply on its own, before we even start talking about the reason we're exploring, which comes down to the genestealer cult, and a somewhat associated death cult, but that seems to be helping us, as we are going to be getting a death cult assassin for a companion known as Cabela, who will apparently be romanceable as well, though despite the name, death cults are, in general, pretty faithful to the Emperor, as they see the meting out of death and blood, of course, as exaltations of the God Emperor of mankind, and this particular death cult is apparently going to be pretty tied to the Von Valancius dynasty, which is why they're on your ship to begin with. But the presence of a death cult is not exactly something that is uncommon within the Imperium of Man, and it seems to be that they are in conflict with a genestealer cult. Now, initially, the big clue here was that in the key art, and likely what I used as the thumbnail for this video, shows a genestealer aberrant, which is, of course, a type of genestealer, but also if you go to the DLC page on Steam, it just flat out tells you that's the case. So let's talk about that. Now, genestealers are a type of tyrannid, one of the many dangers of the Warhammer 40k universe being a sort of biological hive mind that scours planets clean of organic material, using it to feed and grow, basically. But before Tyranids show up and fully assault a planet, they first send gene stealers, which are a sort of parasitic organism that is largely humanoid in shape, but infiltrates society, and their main job is simply to infiltrate, reproduce, and simply be ready for the full invasion, which they of course do, and their ability to pass the virus that allows them to take control of other species through telepathy, as well as their ability to reproduce through these species and and make things that could even pass for human at a certain point makes them especially dangerous. So getting to interact with one of these cults through the medium of a full-blown CRPG I think has the potential to be really cool, even if it is purely, of course, an adversarial form. Genestealers are, of course, intelligent, so theoretically you might be able to have a conversation with one, and I'm excited to see what they do with that. But that's not the only thing the DLC is going to be doing. Because this DLC is going to be focusing on our Void ship, we know for a fact it's going to bring some expansions to that exact thing, allowing you to not only explore new areas of the ship, but also unlock extra upgrades for it, which will allow you to take part in Void ship combat in theory a little bit differently, though exactly the extent of these upgrades is not known yet, but it looks like they will be fleshing out that system a little bit more, which is certainly nice to see. And last but not least, before we wrap this video up, there is one other thing I wanted to mention, but it is purely speculation. I have found exactly one place mention this. I cannot seem to verify it anywhere. But this DLC might also be dropping 2 new archetypes, which I hope is something that turns out to be true, as I think there's a lot of overlap in the general setup and builds of a lot of your companions and characters, and anything that goes about diversifying that I think would be very welcome. But again, that part is just speculation. I do not know 100% that that is going to happen, because I can't verify it anywhere. But nonetheless, I think that pretty much wraps up everything we know at the moment about this upcoming DLC, and as I'm sure you're aware, I'll absolutely be reviewing it once it drops. But for the here and now, that's pretty much going to wrap it up. So in the meantime, do let me know what you think about all this down in the comments section below, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.